Continuing to read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Abhay, his wife, their two children, Gaur Mohan, Abhay's younger brother, Krishna Charan, Abhay's widowed sister, Rajeshwari, and her son Tulsi Das all went together to an Allahabad studio for a family portrait. The photo shows Abhay in his late 20s. He is thin and dark, with a full mustache. His forehead is broad, his eyes dark and clear. He wears a white kurta and dhoti and plain dark slippers. He sits in a chair, his wife standing behind him, and an attractive young woman in a white khadi sari with a line of color on the border. Her slim arm rests behind Abhay's head on the back of his chair, her small hand gripping the edge of the chair. Her left hand hangs by her side, gripped in a fist. She is barefoot. With his left hand, Abhay studies his two-year-old boy, Pacha, Prayag Raj, a glaring infant on his lap. The boy seeming to squirm, his baby legs and bare feet dangling by his mother's knee. Abhay seems a bit amused by the son on his lap. Abhay is a handsome Indian man, his wife an attractive woman, both young. Also behind Abhay stands his nephew Tulsi and his brother Krishna Charan. Sitting on the far right is Abhay's sister Rajeshwari, dressed in a widow's white sari, holding Sulakshmana, Abhay's daughter, on her lap. Sulakshmana is also squirming, her foot jutting towards the photographer. In the center sits Gaur Mohan. His face is shriveled and his whole body is emaciated with age. He is also wearing a white kurta and dhoti. His hand seems to be moving actively on his lap, perhaps with palsy. He is short and small and old. Abhay traveled frequently throughout northern India, intent on expanding his sales. It was not unusual for him to be gone for a few days in a week and sometimes a week or more at a time as he traveled from one city to another. The pharmaceutical industry was just beginning in India, and doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies were eager to buy from the competent, gentlemanly agent who called on them from Bose's lab of Calcutta. He would travel by train and stay in hotels. He liked the feeling of freedom from home that traveling afforded. But the real drive was servicing accounts and getting new ones. That was his business. Riding in a third class unreserved compartment was often uncomfortable. The only seats were benches, which was often dirty, and passengers were permitted to crowd on without reservations. But that is how Abhay traveled, hundreds of miles every week. As the train moved between towns, he would see the numberless small villages and the country land that spread out before him on either side of the tracks. At every stop, he would hear the cries of the tea vendors as they walked alongside the tray windows. Chai, chai, tea. The British had introduced it, and now millions of Indians were convinced that they could not get through the morning without the little glass of hot tea. As a strict Vaishnava, Abhay never touched it, but his wife, much to his displeasure, was becoming a regular tea drinker. Although Abhay was accustomed to dressing as a European businessman, he never compromised his strict Vaishnava principles. Most of his fellow Bengalis had taken up fish eating, but Abhay was careful to avoid non-Vaishnava foods even at hotels. Once at a vegetarian hotel, the Empire Hindu Hotel in Bombay, he was served onions, and sometimes hotel people tried to serve him mushrooms, garlic, and even eggs. But all of these he carefully avoided. Keeping a small semblance of his home routine, he would take his bath early in the morning with cold water. He followed this routine year round, and when in Saharanpur he did so during the bitter cold weather, the hotel keeper was greatly surprised. Abhay conversed with many people in his travels. A doctor in Dhaka told him that on his way to the office, he had passed a farmer talking to a friend and could tell by the sound of the farmer's cough that the farmer would die within few hours. Another doctor told Abhay that he had come from seeing a pneumonia patient who was defying nature and medical science by continuing to live. He met a Mohammedan doctor in Gaya who lamented that he had just lost a patient, although had given the man very best medicine. Such accounts from men of the medical profession confirmed Abhay's conviction that without God's sanction, no one could be saved. Not that he ever thought of his medical sales as philanthropic work, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had already convinced him that the only way to save a person was by giving him Krishna consciousness. Abhay's medical products were strictly for business. On one business trip, it was in 1925, he traveled through Agra, only 40 miles south of Vrindavan. Taking the opportunity, he made his first visit to Holy Vrindavan, fulfilling his childhood aspiration. He loved the sight of Vrindavan, but he could only spend a day or two. Even a single day away from his sales work would be critical. As a reverent pilgrim, Abhay visited a few temples, especially the principal temples established by the followers of Lord Chaitanya, but he had to move on. There were also risks in traveling. Once he was sitting in a train compartment in Mathura station when a monkey suddenly entered and took away his belongings. Early one morning, before dawn, while he was on his way to Kanpur in a two-wheeled horse carriage, the horse was going on a fast trot when suddenly it hit a large heap of rubbish in the middle of the road. The carriage turned upside down. Horse, driver, and carriage all landed in a heap. And Abhay was thrown into the air, but he landed unharmed, feeling as though he had changed to another seat. Because Abhay sat but said nothing, the driver thought he had been knocked unconscious and became anxious. The passenger was all right, however, and the driver considered it a miracle since the cart had so violently ejected him. Abhay took it that he had been saved by Krishna, and he remembered similar incidents, starting with his childhood when his clothing had caught on fire. Krishna had always protected him. That's very nice. I think we can stop here. So basically, very nice reading today. It just shows how Srila Prabhupada was so dedicated all throughout. No matter what it was, like traveling, staying through different hotels and everything, he never gave up his principles. So that's just one thing striking, that how he was always abiding by the Vaishnava principles. So that's that. And then the second thing is about Goptrutve Varnam Tava, right? Like Krishna is my protector, Krishna is my maintainer. One of the limbs of surrender, like the two limbs of surrender. Krishna is my protector, Krishna is my maintainer. So Srila Prabhupada, we can see from his example how he was very, very much situated, very firm in that faith all along, with the different examples of people, even if taking medications, if they were dying, it is just like whoever Krishna would like to maintain, or somebody will have to go. This is all Krishna's plan, and we have nothing to do with that. So I think that was very obvious in today's example, even with the horse cart example, where all of this happened, but he had firm faith if Krishna would protect him.